Hi there. I am here to answer a question that has been sort of coming up in various ways on social media, whether it be on Twitter or on Facebook. It's been asked in a couple different ways, but hopefully this presentation sheds some light on some of the questions that have been highlighted. And the major question that we're going to be asking here is why vote yes and yes now? Why is it important that both of these measures pass pass now as compared to waiting another year or two or three or however long it would take? And in order to do that, there are a few things that we are going to look at. The first is that we are going to look at the cost of repairs. And obviously, that means the cost of repairs to the current high school building. And in order to understand that, we need to do a little bit of a history. And about a year and a half ago or so, there was this task force that was commissioned by the school board in order to look into the possibility of repairing what needs to be repaired at the high school. And throughout that task force, being guided by industry professionals, there was this list that was sent out amongst the group. Vote Yes 332 where it was able to acquire this document here. And I understand that it's very hard to read and that you're not able to make out a lot of those numbers. But in the end, what we ended up um, finding, or this group ended up finding, was that it would be an estimated 42 million, because this covers everything from educational adequacy to safety to accessibility to plumbing, HVAC, roofing, and so much more of all the things that would need to be fixed in an old building. And so the figure that came up with was 42.2 million, and that does not even cover everything that would need to be done for to be a school of the 21st century. And that also doesn't even cover ways to fix the road situation from the parking lot to the school, which would add multiple millions of dollars on top of that 42.2 million. And so that task force presented to the school board that $42.2 million would be the recommended amount. Well, I don't think the task force presented that. I believe it was the consultant through the task force. So just want to make sure that I'm accurate on that. But let's look at the cost to repair here. If indeed the estimate is $42.2 million, that was in 2017, and we think about the fact that construction costs rise about 4.2% per year, just with the course of 2 years, we're already looking at well over $3 million increase from 2017 to 2019. And so 4.2% isn't that big of a deal if you're talking about $20 or $50, but when you're talking about millions of dollars, it certainly adds up quickly the longer that you wait. Now, there has been some talk about state aid, and unfortunately, the way that we understand it is that there would be absolutely no state aid with this. Why? Because the state has a program called Comment and Review that says that they will only provide aid if the cost of repairs is less than 60% of the total cost of a new building. And so, because $42.2 million is well over 62%, was well over 60%, I believe it's in the 70%. Therefore, the state, based on their policies, would not be providing any state aid. So that would mean that the total cost to taxpayers would be $45.7 million, and that's just in 2019. Now, if there was ever a vote that was run on this, which isn't a wise idea, you would probably be talking 2 years from now, and you can probably tack on 4.2% for 45.7, and then you can tack on another 4.2% on top of that, and it's getting closer to 50 million at that point. And so the question is what do we even get for something like that? Well, here is a list that the Mora Public Schools came out with based on if we were to repair or build new. You can see that we've highlighted on the red rectangle there what the repair would get. And notice the biggest highlight here is that there would only be 3 areas that would be totally checked off of the things that we need. And so the rest are either partial or just not an option. And so that's what we would get if we were to repair. Now let's talk about building new. The cost to build new is $59.2 million, and yes, that is bigger than $42.7 million. But we also need to look at the fact that state aid will throw in. They'll pay for 45% if both questions are passed. If only one question is passed, I believe it's 26%. But even still, that's better than 0%. And so the total cost to taxpayers then would be $32.2 million. And we'll talk about the differences here in a second. And going back to that question of what would we get for it? Look at that. That chart is indisputable there. We would get everything that we need in order to have a school that is safe, that is protected, that is healthy, that is up to Minnesota education standards, that will bolster our students into their future careers, and also provide various things for our community as well. So based on that, we're already looking at sort of a no-brainer. But let's look at this in this sort of way. If we're to build new, the total amount that taxpayers would owe would be $32.3 million. And the cost to repair in 2019 would be estimated at $45.7 million. And I don't know about you, but if I had the choice between fixing something up of mine that is super old and not even guaranteed to fix it the way that I would want it to be fixed, if that was more expensive than buying new, well, it's a no-brainer to build new or to buy new in a situation like that. So looking at these numbers, it is way more cost effective. It is way more logical to build new than to repair. So next thing that we need to look at here is state aid. We've talked about it a little bit, but this graphic will help shed some light on it because I'm a visual kind of person, and I like seeing charts and graphs. That helps me think a little bit better and help understand things a bit. Now, if only question one passes, you can see that that's only 28%. I'm sorry, I think I said 26 before, but it's 28. And you can look at the bottom. If both questions pass, we're looking at a 45% state share. Now, if I'm a hungry guy, which happens quite often, and I have a pie in front of me, I'm going to want to eat close to half of that pie rather than just 28% of it. And so the statement that needs to be said is that that if we wait longer, the state is going to provide less. The longer we wait, the less state aid we will receive. And so we're going to see this in the cost of construction, which we've already talked about a bit. That industry experts have found that the cost of construction has gone up an average of 4.2% over the last decade. That's an important figure to remember, because on this chart here, it shows sort of the progression that of different referendums that we have tried to pass in the past. You see 2012, $43.6 million for a high school. 2015, just about $50 million. 2017, 52. And here we are just 2 years later, it's 59. Well, there's such a discrepancy there because you keep adding 4.2% onto the previous figure, and it's going to start going up exponentially after a while. So that's why in 2025, we see the astronomically high value of $75.8 million. That yellow line right there, that all that is just sort of a trajectory, so that you can get a feel for where that's going. It's a projection line. State aid, again. State aid is based on the amount of debt that a school district has. And so this is a question that has come up a couple times, that if we wait, why is it that the cost of construction goes up, but yet the amount of state aid is going to go down? And I'm going to put on an illustration here. It's not a perfect illustration, but at least it's an illustration to help highlight something. I'm a guy that absolutely loves coffee. And you can see here that this coffee cup, he is happy because I am happy when I drink coffee. Now, imagine if this coffee cup symbolically is related to our district's debt. And through our debt, we have a Trail View edition. And we also have the Wellness Center edition that happened just a couple years ago. And they're pouring coffee in, which, oh man, what a great sound, what a great smell that is to have coffee put into a cup. But also, if this referendum passes on Tuesday, November 5th, you would also put in the high school amount that would go in there too. And so the coffee cup is getting filled. You can see that the amount of debt is raising up, and I'm fairly certain I see a smile growing on that cup as more coffee is getting poured in there. Well, let's take out the high school for a second. Let's pretend the high school it doesn't. Let's pretend now that it doesn't pass, and we're left going back to the drawing board. Okay, that would be sort of like saying that there's a hole in this cup, and in this hole, it's the smiley face sticking his tongue out. Okay, and when the when there's a hole in the cup, there's going to be coffee that's going to drain out, correct? Well, you can think of that draining out being like debt that is paid off. So every year when the property taxes are due and more is paid towards the debt level lowers, just like a coffee cup would lower if there was a hole in it. Well, let's say that Mr. State of Minnesota here, he pops in and he looks at this coffee cup and says, "Oh, you're drinking your coffee. Things are going down. My records show then that you don't need as much coffee." And because of that, I know it's counterintuitive. Who says that you don't need more coffee? I get it, but this is how the state runs. And so they see that your debt's lowering, therefore you have more economic ability to pay loans. I'm sorry, in this case, it's bonds, and the state at that point is not willing to give as much. Again, counterintuitive, I know, but it's how the state works. So that's an illustration of that. And so if we wait longer, it will cost us significantly more. The cost is going to continue to go up. Remember, that's 4.2% per year. And unfortunately, the help is going to go down. And so whereas now we can have the state pitch in 45, 46%, whatever it was, that is not going to be that high as we go along. So financially, it makes more sense to vote yes and yes now and get this done. Also, one thing we need to look at that most people haven't thought about are the interest rates right now. Interest rates are at a historically low point right now. This is a chart that goes all the way back to 1971 of municipal bonds from every year, and you can see that the low it has just continued to get lower and lower and lower. That's not guaranteed to stay low like this. So now the time is right financially to take out or to sell bonds and make that happen. And so based on all of these things, based on the cost to repair, which is too much money that we can't afford that, based on the fact that we have state aid to provide almost half of the cost of a building, based on the fact that interest rates are at a historically low amount right now, we need to vote yes and yes. Now, as I'm talking here, it is Sunday evening, 2 days before the vote. And we're getting towards the 11th hour, and so we want to plead with you to vote yes and yes. It is the best financial decision. It is a way that you can make your mark for generations to come, and it is a way that we can help our community to grow into the future. And so we are asking you and pleading with you to vote yes and yes, and please go out and vote, because your vote does indeed matter. Obviously, there were advertisements that came out in the paper that said if you don't vote, they count it as a yes. Not true. That's already been debunked by the county and by the Kanabec County Times. And so you can't always believe everything that comes out in those yellow ads. We need you to go out and vote. We love your support, but we need your vote. And as always, you can find us on our 3 social media platforms, whether it be Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. It's with that we are pumping out as much information, truthful information as we can. And as we come closer to the vote, we want to encourage you to get out and vote on Tuesday. Don't forget that early voting closes tomorrow. And so go out and vote. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to message us on these platforms, and we would love to answer any of your questions. Bring a friend. Tuesday, November 5th. Vote yes and yes. Together we can do this.